Hey folks, Josh here. You may know me as the steward of Rugged Ridge Forest, where we craft wood-fired, organic, pure Vermont maple syrup using as much traditional horsepower as we can. We'd really appreciate your support if you ordered some of our wood-fired maple syrup from ruggedridgeforest.com. You may also recognize Hugo here, our 2-year-old standardbred percheron cross. Anyone who has seen any of our content will know that Hugo is very sweet, very eager to learn, and a gentle Amish bred horse. When I purchased him off my Amish friend Andy out in Ohio, Andy pointed out his hernia. At the time, I was a little bit overwhelmed by a lot of emotions tied up in buying a horse, and I might not have given fair weight to Hugo's hernia in my consideration. But at the end of the day, I still feel like I got a great horse. When Andy pointed out the hernia, he mentioned that his vet could fix it for about $300. Now, Andy might have been referring to a yearling colt who got stitched up or banded in the field while they were doing another service, such as castration. Unfortunately, since Hugo was 2 years old and change, and roughly 1,200 pounds at the time of his surgery, and the surgery was performed at a top of the line large animal surgical clinic, the surgery wound up costing me around 10 times that, with all the transportation, pre op, and post operative care included. I don't blame Andy for the misinformation. We come from different worlds, and while he may have downplayed it, I didn't even notice the hernia until he pointed it out to me. Many people have said wait and see is a fair treatment for such a hernia, this being a small one at that, about 2 inches long. But just as many people have told me that they would never buy a horse with a hernia. When I first got Hugo, my vet and I decided that we could wait and see and probably would not need to do anything. However, my experience on YouTube actually led me to some commenters who shared horror stories about seeing a horse split from pelvis to sternum due to ruptured umbilical hernias, and they had to be put down on the spot. Please realize that I'm not a medical expert or veterinarian, but in my studies I did learn some things. A hernia is an opening in the muscle of the abdominal wall. It can be congenital or the result of an injury, or a congenital hernia can be exacerbated by an injury. Two common hernias in horses are umbilical hernias, like Hugo's, and inguinal hernias, which often happen with cryptorchid. What happens with cryptorchid is that the abdominal muscles in the groin never fully close, and so the testes either pass through, but the opening never closes, or they never pass through at all. And so you not only have problems with the testes, but you also risk that the intestine will enter the scrotum through the hernia. With umbilical hernias, the muscle never finishes forming and closing around the umbilical cord and the belly button. This creates a ring through which you can feel the intestines. If the intestines pass through a hernia, they can be pinched off and blocked, which could eventually kill the animal. Additionally, the hernia is a weak part of the abdominal wall that could eventually rupture and tear, causing further pain and structural damage to the animal. Animals with hernias shouldn't be used for breeding. Since Hugo is going to be used for a pulling horse, both logs and sleds, and because he is young and not quite in steady work just yet, it seems not only worth doing the surgery, but the perfect time to do it. I had the surgery done at the Vermont Large Animal Clinic, and it's a good thing I did, as they are going to be closing soon or possibly changing hands. The service was uber smooth and professional, the facilities were top notch, and the care and the follow up were amazing. I even think the surgeon was a heck of a craftsman and did good work on Hugo. One of the nurses was even kind enough to give us a little tour.
So this is nurse station. This is where we do all of our blood work. We have our medication stored, and we run the autoclave to sterilize all the surgical equipment and that kind of stuff. And then as we come into here, this is our surgical suite. So this is where we do all of our surgical procedures. The induction stall is over here, and basically we anesthetize with them squeezed up against the wall. After they're down, we are able to hoist them around the room, essentially by their legs. We can either place them on the table for surgery, or we can bring them into recovery to let them wake up on their own.
My only complaint was the price, but they did not go over their estimate. He mentioned he thought conservatively there was an 80% chance the surgery would be a complete success. I was hoping he'd say 99% at that price, but he did mention that he was being conservative, and he wanted to keep everybody's expectations within reason. The follow-up care post-op was 30 days of stall rest and antibiotics, followed by 30 days in a small paddock. Hand walking was allowed after 2 weeks. I felt terrible for Hugo during the stall rest, especially the last week or so, but he had been an angel the whole way through. He did get a little frisky his first few days in the paddock, galloping and bucking a few times, but thankfully his stitches held, and we always tried to calm him down when we saw him getting a little spry. Since Hugo was an unbroke 2-year-old when I bought him, I still feel like I got the horse at a very fair value. However, any deal I thought I might have gotten on the horse was quickly lost in the wash with the hernia. You good, big guy? All right, I'm glad you're okay. Throughout it all, Hugo was a complete saint. This was only his second time loading onto a trailer, the first being the day I bought him, and he walked right on without hesitation. Everyone at the large animal clinic, from surgeon to receptionist, loved him. He was always on his best behavior and always trying to do what was asked of him in the moment. If he was scared, he didn't let it on. He just seemed a little bit curious with a small dose of caution. A perfect boy. Although I love a good whinny, it was downright heartbreaking hearing the horses call to each other as I took Hugo away. Easy, big guy. Hugo boy. This little small trail for you. You're a good boy. But it was just as sweet to see how excited they were to see each other again when he came back. These two really love each other. Look who it is. Hugo's back. Hugo's back. Let me go get some stuff to put down in his stall, but I'll be right back. Excited to see him back? That's a good mare. How's your little stall, Hugo? Oh, are you a good boy? Yeah, I'll be back with some water for you in a second, okay, big guy? You are a very good boy. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Look at you two. Good boy. I'm reminded of the story of the horse. A man bought a horse for his son. It was a good horse for a good value, and so the man was happy. The man's son fell off the horse and broke his leg, and so the man was unhappy with the horse. But then the man's son was drafted for the war but couldn't go because of his broken leg. Every other young man in town was eventually killed in the war, and so falling off that horse saved that boy's life. And again, the man was happy with the horse. It seems like in horse ownership, like in many things, it is not all black and white whether something is good or bad. And as time wears on, our opinions about any given thing change and change back again. But at this point in Hugo's story, I'm quite happy. Overall, I'm very grateful that we did the surgery, especially now that the majority of the post-operative care is over with. It was a pain hauling water in the cold and having to dissolve antibiotics twice a day for a month. But now, looking back, I think it was worth it. Hugo has not returned to work or strenuous training just yet, but we are keeping up with his ground manners, and he's getting better every day. He won't log or pull a sled this winter, and spring is our busy time of year to make maple syrup. But this summer, the summer of his 3rd year, we're really looking forward to breaking him to drive a sled and a cart, as well as to ride. Hey, Hugo, you walk with me? And we really hope that you enjoyed our videos and our content. And if you want to support us in our efforts, we'd really appreciate it if you could head on over to ruggedridgeforest.com and grab some of our wood-fired, organic, pure Vermont maple syrup. We're farmers first and content creators second. And if you could head on over to ruggedridgeforest.com, it would really help us to continue doing what we're doing. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. And as you can see, Hugo's recovered wonderfully from his surgery, and we're really grateful for your support. Thank you. Bye. You're a good boy.